The vast, unforgiving expanse of the Western Pacific in 1945 stretched endlessly, a slate-gray canvas under a sky the color of old steel. Distant sirens, mournful and sharp, pierced the humid air, a constant, chilling reminder of the war that raged just beyond the horizon. It was a world teetering on the brink, a theater of unimaginable conflict where heroism often emerged from the most unexpected corners. This was the stage, grim and immense, upon which Lieutenant June Mercer, a woman of quiet strength and unwavering dedication, was about to etch her name into the annals of wartime bravery. Her story, however, began not with a bang, but with the steady pulse of a medical ship, its engines churning rhythmically through the choppy waters, a fragile haven in a world consumed by chaos. Lieutenant June Mercer was not a warrior in the traditional sense. Her uniform was crisp white, not olive drab, and her weapons were not rifles or bombs, but antiseptic and bandages. A dedicated nurse from a small town in Oregon, she had volunteered for service with a calm resolve that belied the immense dangers she would face. Stationed aboard the USS Comfort, a hospital ship navigating the perilous waters off the Japanese coast, June's days were a meticulous ballet of care. She moved with practiced grace through wards filled with the wounded, her hands gentle but firm, her eyes reflecting an empathetic understanding of human suffering. Her quiet demeanor often masked a steel spine, a necessary attribute for anyone serving in this brutal conflict. Each morning, she'd rise before dawn, the ship's gentle roll a familiar lullaby, and begin her rounds. The constant hum of the ship, the smells of disinfectant and human pain, and the ever-present threat of enemy action had become her reality. Yet, beneath the surface of this grueling routine, June harbored an almost imperceptible vigilance, a readiness for the sudden, the unexpected, the terrible. That terrible unexpected arrived with a shattering force. The relative calm of the morning was violently ripped apart by the guttural roar of an engine in distress, followed by an ear-splitting explosion that vibrated through the very hull of the Comfort. Immediately, the ship's loudspeakers crackled to life, relaying the grim news: a B-25 bomber, on a reconnaissance mission, had been shot down, plummeting into the churning waves just a few miles from their position. The words hung heavy in the air, a death knell for some, a call to arms for others. A rescue operation was needed, swiftly and decisively, before the unforgiving ocean claimed its victims. June's reaction was instantaneous, a surge of adrenaline sharpened by years of medical training. Her mind, usually calm and methodical, shifted into high gear, assessing the situation with remarkable clarity. The cries of injured men, the immediate aftermath of a crash, these were her domain. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned to the ship's captain, her voice steady amidst the rising clamor. "Captain, I can lead a launch. We need to get out there now." Her conviction was palpable, cutting through the initial shock that had frozen others. To many, a nurse leading a rescue boat into a war zone might have seemed an absurd proposition, but June saw only the immediate need, the lives hanging by a thread. She took charge, her sense of responsibility overriding any personal fear. Assembling her rescue team was a whirlwind of urgent commands and quick actions. Naval corpsmen, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and determination, scrambled to prepare the small motorboat. Stretchers, medical supplies, blankets, and rations were loaded with frantic efficiency. June, her face set in a grim line, personally checked each item, her focus absolute. The vast, indifferent ocean lay before them, a watery grave for the unlucky, a terrifying expanse for those seeking survivors. She knew the clock was ticking, each passing minute reducing the chances of finding anyone alive. The palpable fear in the air was a heavy blanket, but June's unwavering resolve seemed to part it, if only for her small team. Her eyes scanned the choppy waters, already searching for any sign, any debris, a silent prayer forming on her lips. This was not a moment for hesitation or doubt. This was a moment for action, for courage, for the unwavering belief that every life was worth fighting for. Before we delve deeper into Lieutenant Mercer's incredible journey into the heart of danger, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories of wartime heroism, tales that deserve to be remembered and honored. The rescue boat, a small defiance against the immense Pacific, cut through the waves with a determined hum, carrying June and her crew further from the relative safety of the hospital ship. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, meticulously scanned the horizon, trained by years of observation to pick out the slightest anomaly in the vast blue expanse. She wasn't just looking for bodies, she was tracking debris, understanding the currents, mentally mapping the trajectory of the downed B-25, a natural leader emerging from the dedicated nurse. This was not the orderly environment of a hospital ward, but June's methodical brain adapted, processing variables with an innate problem-solving skill she herself hadn't fully recognized before this moment. Every ripple, every distant glint, held a potential clue. The relentless scan across the choppy waters was physically demanding, but her will was unyielding, fueled by the desperate urgency of their mission. She knew time was an enemy as formidable as any Imperial soldier. It wasn't long before the grim reality of their situation asserted itself. The first sightings were not of survivors, but of wreckage, shattered pieces of aluminum, a life raft torn to shreds, the stark, unsettling debris of a violent impact. Then, a dark shape bobbing in the distance. Her heart hammered against her ribs as they drew closer, revealing a figure clinging precariously to a fragment of the plane. The first survivor was pulled from the water, hypothermic, disoriented, and bleeding from a nasty gash across his forehead. June's medical instincts took over instantly. She barked orders, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands, directing her corpsmen to begin immediate first aid, stabilizing the airman, wrapping him in warm blankets. Another, then another, emerged from the vastness, each one a testament to the brutal efficiency of war. These were not statistics, they were young men, terrified and clinging to life, and June was their only hope. The euphoria of finding survivors was quickly tempered by a chilling realization: they were operating deep within enemy territory. The waters around Tokyo Bay, where the B-25 had fallen, were patrolled relentlessly by Japanese naval forces. Every minute they spent retrieving downed airmen pushed them further into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The distant sound of a patrol boat, a low thrum that vibrated through the water, sent a jolt of fear through the crew. They were a single, vulnerable rescue craft, exposed and without escort, a glaring target in a hostile sea. The increasing awareness of their perilous position was a heavy weight on June's shoulders, a stark contrast to the secure, well-defended hospital ship they had left behind. The calm nurse was now a commander, facing an enemy she couldn't bandage. The sun began its slow descent, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful but ominous signal. With dwindling daylight, the harsh marine environment would become even more formidable. Hypothermia, shark attacks, the sheer endlessness of the ocean, all would conspire against the unrescued and the rescuers alike. June's unwavering focus intensified, her gaze sweeping the water with renewed urgency. They needed to gather as many as possible before nightfall, before the ocean's embrace became a final, icy grip. There was no time for hesitation, no room for error. Every life they saved now was a life kept from the depths of the unforgiving sea. More survivors were located, each discovery an emotional rollercoaster. A group of 3, huddled together on a deflated life raft, their faces etched with exhaustion and terror, their uniforms torn and soaked. Then 2 more, clinging to a piece of fuselage, barely conscious. The small rescue boat, designed for a handful of people, was fast becoming alarmingly crowded. Each rescued airman presented new medical challenges, new wounds to tend, new fears to soothe. June moved among them, a whirlwind of calm efficiency, her hands working tirelessly, her voice a soft, reassuring presence in the midst of their trauma. The growing number on board solidified the weight of her mission. She was responsible for all of them. The burden of command settled firmly upon June. She was no longer just a nurse attending to patients, she was the de facto leader of this desperate expedition, the one whose decisions would determine life or death for 14 men. Her firm orders, delivered with quiet authority, were instantly obeyed. She planned their limited resources, directed the boat's course, and made critical judgment calls about who to prioritize and where to search next. The transformation was profound, from dedicated nurse to moral commander, forging a team from a small crew and a boatload of traumatized airmen. Her presence, a beacon of calm determination, offered a sliver of hope to the men whose lives now rested entirely in her capable hands. The crowded rescue boat was now a floating testament to both tragedy and resilience. All 14 airmen, pulled from the treacherous waters, huddled together, their bodies bruised and battered, their spirits teetering on the edge of despair. June moved among them, a guardian angel in soaked whites, her medical skills stretched to their absolute limits. She administered first aid to open wounds, braced fractured limbs with improvised splints, and tirelessly worked to combat the insidious chill of hypothermia that gnawed at their core. Each face she touched, each trembling hand she held, reinforced the immense responsibility now solely resting upon her slender shoulders. There was a young pilot, barely out of his teens, shivering uncontrollably despite the blankets wrapped around him, an older gunner, his eyes wide with shock, muttering incoherently about the fiery crash. June offered them water, words of comfort, and the silent promise of safe passage, all while her own exhaustion began to press down. As the last sliver of daylight vanished beneath the horizon, a new, more profound dread descended. The vast, inky blackness of the Pacific night amplified every sound, every creak of the boat, every distant splash. It was the sound of a patrol boat, a low, menacing thrum that occasionally rippled across the water, carrying with it the undeniable threat of Japanese forces. The limited visibility, once a challenge, now became a deadly shroud, making them both unseen and unable to see the approaching danger. Their precarious position, adrift in enemy waters, was no longer a theoretical risk, it was a cold, stark reality. The sea, which had just hours ago been a scene of rescue, now felt like a vast, dark prison, its walls patrolled by an unseen enemy. June, despite her fatigue, felt her mind sharpen, confronting a critical, life-or-death strategic dilemma. Staying put meant almost certain discovery by dawn. An immediate return to base, however, was equally perilous. Their small, slow boat was an easy target for patrol ships designed for speed and combat. A desperate choice loomed: risk everything in a direct confrontation or embrace the shadows, using stealth and deception. Her decision, born from an innate resourcefulness, was clear. They would hide. They would evade. And they would do so with cunning, turning the bay itself into an accomplice. The idea was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy, but in the face of such overwhelming odds, audacity was their only weapon. From the quiet resolve of a nurse, an unexpected tactic was born. June's mind raced, recalling naval strategies she'd only read about in reports, combined with an improvisational flair honed from years of adapting in emergency situations. She envisioned creating a deceptive maze, a series of false signals designed to confuse and disorient the enemy. Her plan was simple yet brilliant: use the limited signal flares and smoke canisters they had on board, not to signal for help, but to create diversions, drawing Japanese patrols away from their true location. This unexpected strategy, emanating from a woman whose primary tools were empathy and healing, was a testament to the extraordinary circumstances that forge extraordinary leaders. Her team, exhausted and fearful, listened intently, their hopes rekindled by the sheer audacity of her proposal. Implementing the deception required precision and unwavering nerves. June, her voice a calm whisper in the dark, issued her instructions. At strategic intervals, chosen to maximize confusion and mimic distress signals from multiple locations, a flare would arc into the night sky, its brief, fiery brilliance momentarily piercing the darkness. Immediately following, a smoke canister would be deployed, creating a lingering plume that suggested a damaged vessel. Her team, initially hesitant and bewildered by this unorthodox command, followed her orders with growing trust. Each silent maneuver of the boat, each carefully timed deployment of a flare, was executed with a shared understanding of the immense stakes. They were playing a dangerous game of illusion, betting their lives on June's strategic gamble. The tension was almost unbearable. They had launched their first set of diversions, and now, cloaked in darkness, they waited. The distant thrumming sound grew louder, closer, the unmistakable presence of a Japanese patrol ship. June held her breath, her gaze fixed on the dark outline approaching their position, a silent prayer on her lips. The patrol ship, its searchlights cutting swaths through the night, veered sharply, drawn like a moth to the false light June had created. It passed them by, a dark, menacing shadow, its crew unknowingly fooled by the nurse's daring ruse. A collective sigh of relief, barely audible, rippled through the survivors and crew. They had evaded detection, at least for now. The night was far from over, but June had bought them precious time. The night was a canvas for June's escalating chess game, each move calculated, each silence heavy with intent. She continued to refine her deceptive tactics, using the vastness of the bay to her advantage. Periods of deliberate silence, where the boat drifted almost imperceptibly, were interspersed with brief, controlled bursts of engine power to navigate away from any perceived threats. Minimal light was permitted, just enough for the most essential tasks, transforming the small vessel into a phantom on the water. Her goal was to further confound the Japanese forces, leading them on a wild goose chase through the moonless expanse, while they slipped silently through the shadows. The airmen, now fully invested in her plan, held their breath with every maneuver, their eyes glued to June's profile, a silent acknowledgement of her improbable leadership. The physical and emotional exhaustion, however, began to set in, a creeping chill that no blanket could entirely ward off. June felt it too, a dull ache behind her eyes, a tremor in her hands that she fought to control. For her crew, the relentless tension was a heavy burden, but for the injured airmen, it was compounded by their pain, their fear, and the lingering trauma of the crash. Maintaining morale became a challenge as crucial as evading detection. June moved among them, offering quiet encouragement, sharing their meager rations, and reiterating her unwavering promise of return. She understood that hope, however fragile, was their most potent medicine, and she nurtured it with every word, every gesture, refusing to let the heavy weight of their situation crush their spirit. Several heart-stopping moments punctuated the agonizing hours. A distant searchlight, sweeping across the water, lingered ominously close, forcing June to order an immediate, silent stop, the boat becoming one with the dark waves. Another time, the unmistakable silhouette of a larger Japanese vessel emerged from the gloom, its engines a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the very water around them. June, with lightning-fast reflexes, ordered the deployment of a new, bolder diversion further away, drawing the warship's attention and its powerful search beams in the wrong direction. Her quick thinking and calm under unimaginable pressure were not merely acts of bravery, they were tactical genius, each decision a testament to a mind remarkably suited for crisis management. The airmen watched her, utterly mesmerized, their lives hanging on her every command. The airmen, initially passive recipients of her care, began to look to June for every decision, every nuance of their desperate flight. Their initial deference had transformed into an emergent leadership, a profound trust born from shared peril and her undeniable competence. They recognized her extraordinary courage, but also her strategic prowess, a sharp intellect that had outmaneuvered a far superior enemy. When she spoke, they listened with rapt attention, a silent agreement passing among them that she was their one chance at survival. Her authority, initially granted by circumstance, was now earned, solidified by her unwavering resolve and her astonishing ingenuity. She was no longer just the nurse, she was their commander, their hope, their lifeline. June began to treat the treacherous Tokyo Bay not as a vast, unpredictable enemy, but as a complex puzzle that she, and she alone, could solve. She used the natural features of the bay, a cluster of small, uninhabited islands, a stretch of shallow, rocky coastline, as temporary hiding spots. She observed the currents, understanding how they would carry both their vessel and any potential pursuers. She even learned to anticipate enemy movements, recognizing patterns in their patrol routes, exploiting their blind spots and predictable behaviors. The chaotic environment, once a source of terror, was slowly, meticulously transformed into her tactical playground, a labyrinth she was learning to navigate with astonishing precision, turning the very elements against her pursuers. A silent pact solidified within June, they would all return, every single one of them. She voiced this promise to her crew and to the survivors, her words a quiet vow against the overwhelming odds. "We will get home," she stated, her voice devoid of theatrics, rich with absolute conviction. All of us. This determination, unwavering and absolute, became the bedrock of their collective resolve. It wasn't just a mission anymore, it was a personal commitment, a bond forged in the crucible of fear and survival. Her resolve became contagious, a quiet strength that rippled through the boat, an invisible shield against the encroaching despair. Sustaining the elaborate evade through the deepening night demanded every ounce of June's ingenuity and strength. Their limited supplies, painstakingly rationed, dwindled with every passing hour. The injuries of the airmen, though stabilized, became a constant, throbbing reminder of their precarious situation, each cough or groan echoing the fading hope of swift rescue. June moved tirelessly, a shadow among shadows, her movements deliberate, her voice a hushed balm. She checked bandages, administered sips of precious water, and offered quiet words of encouragement to the men whose faces were now drawn and pale in the pre-dawn gloom. She knew that every moment was a gamble, every decision a potential turning point toward salvation or disaster. Yet, even as their physical resources dwindled, her mental resolve sharpened, finding new ways to stretch their meager provisions. Brief, terrifying glimpses of despair flickered across the faces of the airmen. One young man, his eyes hollow bowls of fear, whispered about his wife, convinced he would never see her again. Another, delirious with pain, began to call out for his mother. In these moments, June was more than a nurse or a commander, she was an anchor. She'd lean in close, her voice a hypnotic whisper, reminding them of home, of victory, of the promise she had made. Her unwavering resolve was a stark contrast to their fading spirits, yet it was precisely this contrast that kept them from succumbing. She spoke not just of survival, but of purpose, of the lives waiting for them beyond this dark bay. Her ability to keep spirits alive, to rekindle that flickering flame of hope, was as vital as any medical intervention. June's clever use of resources became a masterclass in improvisation. The boat's meager supplies, an extra canvas top, some loose ropes, even empty ration tins, were repurposed. The top, draped strategically, altered the boat's silhouette against the skyline, making it harder to identify. The ropes were used to secure loose debris, preventing telltale sounds that could carry across the water. She even utilized the natural environment itself. Dense clumps of floating seaweed and debris became natural camouflage at times, allowing them to blend almost perfectly with the scattered flotsam of the bay. Every discarded item, every natural element, was scrutinized for its potential to maintain their disguise and ensure their continued evasion. Nothing was wasted, every scrap served a purpose in their desperate game of hide-and-seek. The night reached its most intense point with a near discovery that sent a jolt of pure terror through everyone on board. A Japanese torpedo boat, sleek and deadly, suddenly rounded a small promontory, its engines roaring, its searchlight cutting a wide, blinding arc directly towards their position. There was no time for diversion, nowhere to hide. June's mind raced, 1,000 calculations flashing through her brain in an instant. Her decision was made with brutal clarity. She ordered the boat to full throttle, not away from the torpedo boat, but directly towards a narrow, barely navigable channel choked with submerged rocks, a path no sane navigator would attempt in the dark. It was a high-stakes gamble, risking their vessel and everyone on it against the certainty of capture. The torpedo boat, caught off guard by their audacious move, hesitated, its crew perhaps believing the small vessel was intentionally sinking or had gone rogue. That split-second hesitation was all June needed. The rescue boat, scraping and groaning, miraculously cleared the treacherous channel, leaving the bewildered Japanese crew shouting curses in their wake. The sheer adrenaline of the escape left everyone breathless, their hearts pounding in their ears. The shared ordeal, now intensified by that harrowing escape, forged an unbreakable bond. The initial distance between the nurse, her small crew, and the rescued airmen dissolved entirely. They had faced death together, trusted each other implicitly, and emerged from the jaws of peril simply because of June's leadership. The airmen, once simply patients, now looked at her with profound respect, their gratitude etched into their exhausted faces. They were no longer 14 disparate individuals, they had become a cohesive unit, a small, defiant family bound by the silent understanding of their collective survival, all united under June's extraordinary command. Every man on that boat would have followed her to the ends of the earth. As the first faint signs of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, a new sense of hope, delicate yet persistent, emerged. The inky blackness began to recede, yielding to a soft, pearlescent grey. It was an almost spiritual awakening, a silent testament to their resilience. The realization that they had survived the night, a night that had thrown every conceivable danger at them, enemy patrols, dwindling resources, the crushing weight of despair, and the constant threat of the unforgiving sea, against overwhelming odds, settled over the weary group. The sun's nascent glow wasn't just light, it was a promise. They had made it through. The sun's nascent glow wasn't just light, it was a promise. They had made it through the longest, most terrifying night of their lives. With dawn now painting the horizon, June knew their window for escape, for truly breaking free from the immediate clutches of Tokyo Bay, was closing rapidly. The light brought visibility, which was a double-edged sword. While it made navigation easier, it also made them far more visible to the enemy patrols she had so cunningly evaded in the darkness. The final push required precision, daring, and an even deeper understanding of the bay's shifting landscape. She meticulously planned their next, and hopefully final, maneuver, intending to exploit any momentary lull in enemy activity, any blind spot in their patrols that daylight might reveal. The heightened tension aboard the small boat was palpable, a silent hum of anticipation and fear as they prepared for their last, critical move. Every eye was on June, every breath held in collective suspense. Her chosen route was a calculated risk, a narrow passage skirting a heavily fortified island that Japanese forces rarely patrolled closely, perhaps deeming it too treacherous for routine checks. June had observed this blind spot during the night, noticing the consistent pattern of patrol vessels avoiding the area. It was a gamble, but one based on careful observation and an intuitive grasp of her adversary's habits. She waited, watching the patterns of the distant patrol boats, timing their movements with the precision of a master clockmaker. Then, with a decisive nod, she gave the order. The small boat, its engine now humming quietly but powerfully, veered sharply, picking up speed, cutting a direct path towards the perilous channel. The airmen braced themselves, gripping the sides of the boat, their eyes darting between June's resolute profile and the looming shadows of the island. It was a race against time, a dash for freedom, with every moment steeped in the adrenaline of impending discovery. The exhilarating moment of breaking free arrived with the first rays of full sunlight. As they successfully navigated out of the immediate danger zone, clearing the treacherous passage, the realization dawned on everyone that they had truly left the puzzle of Tokyo Bay behind them. The oppressive, unseen presence of enemy patrols began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of relief that washed over the boat. The tension, which had been a suffocating blanket for hours, now lifted, allowing for a collective, trembling exhale. The immediate threat, the cat-and-mouse game within the bay's confines, was over. They were no longer actively hunted, no longer hiding in plain sight. They were moving towards open water, towards the promise of safety, leaving the deadly labyrinth in their wake. Then, a sight that brought tears to the eyes of the weary airmen and crew. On the distant horizon, a familiar profile emerged, the unmistakable silhouette of an American destroyer, its flags whipping proudly in the morning breeze. Moments later, the crackle of their radio brought a voice, clear and strong, speaking English. It was a friendly signal, a call for identification, asking for their position. The emotional impact was overwhelming. It was real. They were safe. The raw, guttural cheers that erupted from the airmen were a testament to the profound relief that finally, truly, washed over them. June, too, felt a tremor of emotion, a wave of exhaustion threatening to buckle her knees, but she held firm, her gaze fixed on the approaching vessel, her mission not yet complete. The collective relief aboard the boat was profound, almost physical. The airmen slumped against one another, some weeping openly, others simply staring blankly with wide, relieved eyes at the approaching destroyer. The quiet celebration was a mix of exhaustion and euphoria. Their survival, once a fragile hope, was now a solid, tangible reality. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, thanks to the improbable leadership of a nurse. The silence that followed the initial outburst of cheers was not one of despair, but of utter, complete emotional depletion, a deep internal settling after hours of intense, unrelenting peril. They were safe, and the enormity of that fact slowly began to sink in, like a warm balm on their bruised and battered souls. The journey home, though slow and steady, was a time for reflection and recovery. The destroyer, having located them, cautiously approached, and lines were eventually thrown. One by one, the rescued airmen, some limping, some carried, were transferred onto the larger, safer vessel. They were finally able to rest, to receive proper medical attention, and to begin processing the trauma of their ordeal. Though shaken, their gratitude for June Mercer was evident in every handshake, every word, every silent, thankful glance. June, despite her own exhaustion, remained vigilant. She oversaw the transfer of her patients, ensuring each man was accounted for, each injury noted. Her watchful gaze continued until every one of her 14 rescued men was safely aboard the destroyer, truly out of harm's way. Only then, with the last airman secure, did she allow herself a moment of quiet, weary satisfaction. The return of Lieutenant June Mercer and her 14 rescued airmen back to their base was met with an outpouring of relief and admiration that rippled through the entire naval community. As the destroyer, now a beacon of hope against the morning sky, docked, a crowd of fellow service members, officers, and medical personnel had gathered, their faces etched with a mixture of anxiety and eager anticipation. When the gangplank finally lowered, and June, her uniform still damp and smudged but her posture unyielding, led her weary charges off the ship, a spontaneous cheer erupted. It wasn't just a cheer for survival, it was a cheer for audacity, for courage, and for a miracle wrought in the darkest hours of the Pacific theater. The airmen, many with tears streaming down their bruised faces, were immediately enveloped by medics and loved ones, but their eyes continuously sought out June, their silent gratitude a powerful testament to her extraordinary actions. Her initial exhaustion gave way to a quiet pride, seeing each man safely returned. The aftermath was a whirlwind of official debriefings and medical examinations. Each airman recounted their harrowing ordeal, their stories converging on one central figure, Lieutenant June Mercer. The full extent of her courage, her ingenuity, and her tactical brilliance quickly became apparent. Her superiors, initially skeptical of a nurse leading such a daring rescue and evasion, listened with growing astonishment as the details of her puzzles in Tokyo Bay unfolded. The story spread like wildfire across the base and beyond, cementing her legend. She wasn't just a brave nurse, she was a strategic mastermind who had outmaneuvered a superior enemy force using nothing but her wits and an unshakable will. Commendations and medals were swiftly prepared, a formal acknowledgement of her unparalleled heroism. The profound change within June herself was perhaps the most significant outcome of that harrowing night. From an anonymous deck nurse, primarily focused on the day-to-day care of the sick and wounded, she had emerged as a moral commander, forever altered by the night's events. Her reflection on the experience was not one of boastful pride, but of deep introspection. She had faced the abyss of chaos and responded not with fear, but with an uncanny clarity of purpose. The weight of those 14 lives had forged in her an inner strength she hadn't known she possessed, transforming her understanding of her own capabilities and the true meaning of leadership. She realized that heroism wasn't just about grand gestures, but about unwavering resolve in the face of impossible odds. Her actions redefined the true meaning of care. It wasn't merely about mending bones or soothing fevers, it was about protecting life with every fiber of one's being, even when it meant venturing into the heart of a war zone. June's audacious endeavors demonstrated that care, in its broadest and deepest sense, could be incredibly bold, resourceful, and even strategically brilliant. Her heroism transcended traditional combat roles, proving that courage wears many uniforms and that the most unexpected individuals can rise to meet the greatest challenges. She had shown that nurturing life required as much, if not more, bravery than taking it. The legacy of June's actions resonated far beyond the immediate commendations. For the 14 men she saved, she was a guardian angel, a living embodiment of hope and resilience. Their lives, and the lives of their families, were forever touched by her unwavering determination. On a broader scale, her story became a powerful morale booster, a beacon of light in the grim reality of war, reminding everyone that even in the darkest moments, humanity and ingenuity could triumph against overwhelming odds. She became a symbol of the unexpected heroes found in times of war, proving that selflessness and quick thinking were just as vital as firepower. And so, the tale of Lieutenant June Mercer, the American nurse who saved 14 sailors from a downed B-25 and turned Tokyo Bay into a living hell for her adversaries, stands as a testament to the audacious spirit of humanity. Her courage, resourcefulness, and unwavering commitment to life shine brightly, a powerful message that even in the most perilous situations, one person's unwavering spirit can alter the course of fate. It's a story of unexpected heroism, proving that the greatest victories are often forged not on battlefields, but in the depths of human resolve. Her legend continues, inspiring us all to look for the extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary, and to remember that true bravery often comes quietly, but with immense power. If this incredible story of Lieutenant June Mercer moved you, please make sure to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales of bravery and resilience from the pages of history. Join us next time as we uncover another hidden gem of human courage.